Train the muscles, not the joints.
Welcome back to Natural Gland Bodybuilding.
Moulton.
And today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about standing shoulder press or seated shoulder presses. And this stems from a conversation I had with a guy in the gym the other day where he asked about shoulder presses and whether he should do them or not, because he noticed that when he does, then he ends up weaker on his bench press days because, of course, his front delts are fatigued. Now, there are a few schools of thought on this, and both schools are in my head because on one hand, I've said this before, where you get a lot of front delt work already from your pressing movements. And it really is probably a good idea for most people to focus their shoulder training more on rotator cuff, rear delt, and side delt work, and leave a lot of the front delt work to the pressing movements like the incline presses and bench presses and so forth. But I will say that shoulder pressing does translate to bench pressing. Maybe not directly, like maybe not one-to-one. If you go up 5% in your shoulder press, you're not necessarily going to go up 5% on your bench. But one thing I have noticed is that when I'm shoulder pressing, when I go to bench press, the weight feels lighter. Maybe not the next day after shoulder pressing, but maybe several days later after my delts have recovered, I notice that my bench is a bit more stable and I do have more strength in the bench. Now, this is probably why some powerlifters have used shoulder presses as an auxiliary exercise. So the shoulder press isn't useless. It is actually useful for a number of reasons. One is it does help you recruit those front delts and hit them from a different angle and perhaps bring up their strength that can then translate into some of your other pressing movements. But the other thing is, when you are lifting over the head, you are working some of those postural muscles behind the upper back, which can help keep the shoulder girdle in the right position. So posture does make a difference, right? Posture makes a difference in injury prevention and makes a difference in wear and tear on the body. So when you're working with shoulder pressing and you're shoulder pressing the weight above, you are working those muscles behind the neck, the traps, and you are working the muscles between the shoulder blades, which assists with keeping your shoulders back and strengthening those areas. And we know that if you have too much strength in the front and not enough strength in the back, that can cause injuries or problems with your pressing. So this is another reason to perform shoulder presses once in a while, because it does have a positive effect in a number of different areas in the way that the body develops. And the other thing that people have to remember is that when you are performing any exercise and you are progressing, at some point the progression will start to plateau. And when that happens, by investigating different angles and different exercises like shoulder presses, it may then help you blast through plateaus that you have in other exercises. So like I said, if your front delts get stronger, then that may help you be able to push more weight on your bench press. So this is why I never really exclude an exercise, although depending on the goals that I have at the time, I may choose to use that exercise more often or less often. So that's really what I want to say about that. I do notice that shoulder presses don't have to be performed either in the 4 rep range or 5 rep range. You can get a lot of benefit from doing sets of 10 to 30 reps with shoulder presses. So don't feel obligated to go into the super heavy territory just because it's a compound movement. There are going to be some movements that you find are safer and feel better to work with heavy poundages, and then some other compounds maybe not so much. So feel free to experiment and find out what is perfect for you, because there are a lot of people that injure themselves with shoulder pressing, and most of the time it's because they're doing super heavy behind the neck, or they're doing too heavy, or they're doing too extended a range of motion. So that's why you never see me go below my chin with the bar when I'm shoulder pressing. And that's one of the reasons, because what I find when people go too low, they start to jam their shoulder and start to overstretch the tendons. And sometimes they start getting a chronic bursitis or an inflammation in that area. And it's not necessary in order to get the muscular results. But you guys know this because you've watched my range of motion videos and so forth, and the strategy around why I do what I do. So yeah, don't discard the shoulder press. It's still a great exercise, and it may transfer and help you in other aspects, not just in front delt growth, but it may help transfer to some of the other exercises that you're doing, and also help prevent injuries because of strengthening up those weaker areas. Mountain. So I hope this helped out in your training. Thanks a lot for watching. If you need to get a hold of me, just go to naturalgalantbodybuilding.com, and thanks to the Patreon supporters, and take care for now.